Transformers, more than meets the eye.
As a kid, I really wanted a G1 Optimus Prime. I remember asking for one a few times for birthdays or Christmases, but ended up with various toys that were nearly right, but not quite. Yeah, I guess Onslaught is a truck, and this one was Optimus, but he couldn't transform. Okay, this one was amazing, I wish I still had it. But I never did get a G1 Optimus. On reflection, I suspect it was largely because whenever I asked for it, it was probably during one of those times in the early 90s that there wasn't some kind of reissue of it out. So they got me the closest things that they could. But it remained an itch that I never scratched. And so that meant that, as an adult, when I saw the fanciest Optimus Prime toy I'd ever seen, the first in the new Masterpiece range, I had to have it. And so that's why I have an MP1 Optimus Prime, despite not collecting Transformers at the time, not being a Masterpiece collector at all, or even really someone who collects Optimus Primes beyond the amount of them that you'll naturally amass by being into this hobby. And, well, I don't want to say that this toy is entirely the reason for a couple of those, but it's also not the reason either. So let's take a look at it in this special far longer than normal episode. Okay, let's get the basics out of the way. Although MP1 comes from 2003, this is the 20th anniversary DVD edition version from 2006, which was technically under the Classics line or something. I think. This one didn't come with a DVD, it's not even referenced on the box, but it has all the other hallmarks of that release, so maybe it's a regional thing. I don't know. It's the MP1 mold, so I'm just going to call it MP1, okay? Also, I don't know where his stand has gotten to, but all it did was spout a bunch of Optimus lines not said by Peter Cullen, so who cares? Also, he's not in amazing shape, partially since I may have been dealing with undiagnosed depression for several years, so getting around to simply not storing him in direct sunlight was one of those too much for me for reasons explained by the later diagnosis things. I'm not sure how obvious it'll be on camera, but I'm just mentioning it so no one feels the need to inform me that he's a little rough around the edges in the comments. I know. Anyway, let's start with the good stuff. Like how, sun damage aside, he looks pretty great. We live in a world of relatively screen-accurate G1 Optimus Primes these days, but back in 2003 when this mold was first released, not so much. So you gotta understand how fantastic this looked back then. And I think he's aged pretty well in that one department. One thing that's particularly nice about him is all the little pistons and doodads around his joints. They really make him feel like he's, well, a robot. These bits all have a functional purpose to this living machine. He's not just a series of articulated joints in a vaguely humanoid form. Okay, I suppose it is still that, although I guess that description could equally be applied to me too, so maybe we're just both good at creating an artifice to obscure it. Still, those little touches make simply posing him a visually interesting experience. He's pretty clean and well proportioned too, so it's not immediately obvious where things like his cab wheels have gone. Like, I know they're in the torso somewhere, but how? He's also massive, made before the Masterpiece line reduced its scale. Here's him next to the recent Legacy Deluxe G1 Prime to really hammer it home, or a Defender scale Blocky Prime to make it even sillier. So if you want an absolutely huge Optimus, this is an absolutely huge Optimus. He's got a bunch of little play features too. He's got the mandatory one of opening up his chest to find a matrix of leadership, which can also light up, and I guess we'll find out now if future me could be bothered to replace the batteries. I'm assuming no. He's got little communicator panels in his arms that reveal he's in a Zoom call with both Megatron and Grimlock. It's a safe bet to say that they're both yelling at him for distinct yet broadly similar reasons. He's got this really cool thing where if you put pressure on his feet, the vents in his legs flare open. I've no idea why they included that, it's such a very specific thing, but I'm not complaining. Looks rad as hell. And the best one, if you push a button in the back of his head, his mouth plate wiggles, so you can make him look like he's saying all sorts of stuff.
A booby trap that actually catches boobies. Kill everyone now! Condone first-degree murder!
And yes, I've seen the picture of what lurks behind the faceplate. It's funny and vaguely unpleasant, I know. He came with a handful of accessories. There's the base, which I've lost, we've been over this. There's his ion blaster, which he can mostly hold in his movable fingers, even if there's no slot or anything to actually hold it firmly in place. And was blue for some reason in this release. There's his Energon axe that clips into his hand stub so he can absolutely hold it fine. And finally, there's Megatron. Yeah, you could argue that this is the first masterpiece Megatron. You can take all the gubbins off if you like, and you can extend its handle so Prime can hold it better. But he never holds it well, so this one stays in the box. Okay, now we get to the less good stuff, like his articulation, which is a mixed bag. On paper, it's pretty good. The only thing he's missing is maybe an ab crunch, and he's got stuff you don't always expect, like toes, incredibly deep knees, and his shoulders pop out if you need more room to work with. These are all great features, especially for a mould that's over 20 years old. But actually utilising any of it, well, that's the trick. So there's 4 big interconnected issues with posing this guy. 1, he's heavy. There's a lot of die-cast metal in his legs and chest, so any pose has to contend with all that weight, which means 2, he's mostly big chunky ratchet joints. Realistically, they had to do this to hold up all the weight, but these particular ratchets have very defined places where they can be, making it hard to make the subtle adjustments needed for realistic posing. Also makes everything you do with him just very loud. 3, he's got barely any ankle pivot. Now, I know that this wasn't as ubiquitous a piece of articulation back then as it is now, but the previous problems are made absolutely unmanageable by not being able to plant his feet down flat in most poses. Like, if you put both of his legs into the first outward ratchet position, the ankle pivot isn't enough to cater for that. Sorry, I just realised how dusty he was. Finally, 4. Age has not been kind to him. Maybe this one isn't fair, but there are 2 sets of joints that almost feel designed to weaken over time, and time has indeed passed. His wrists have an interesting little motion they can do, but there's no strength to it at all, so if you've got him displayed, I'd recommend not leaving his blaster in his hand because wow does that wrist joint weaken over time if it's got any weight in it. And the other, much more upsetting issue is the ankles. I know the ankles were also number 3, but this is a separate issue with them, so it counts as a new one. They are just a ball joint with a bit of reinforcement from these pistons. And they are pretty strong ball joints in fairness, but the weight of the figure is just too much for the slop in the mechanism, and it makes him want to lean forward. And over the years, he definitely seems to have developed more and more of a lean. He's always had a bit of one, but he doesn't want to stand up straight anymore at all. Although, to be fair, as anxious as it makes me when I look at it, he is shockingly stable like this. I'd just prefer that smooth criminal was not his default state. So yeah, all those things combined mean that posing him just isn't fun, despite the fact that he technically has everything that he should. Now we get to the part that put me off making this video for the longest time. The transformation. The funny thing about G1 Optimus Prime is that his original toy had an incredibly simple transformation, and his on-screen model is only like 20% different from that toy. But to get that extra 20% requires an outrageous level of engineering, since the things it does are impossible with the original transformation, which is how you end up with things like MP44 being so obscenely complicated. MP1 wasn't that outrageous, thankfully. It's probably closer to the kind of transformation you'd find on, I guess, a mainline leader class toy nowadays. So it's relatively easy, but the heft of the thing makes every clunk feel like something is one step closer to snapping. Look, I'll talk about the truck in a second, and I promise I'll stop going on about how much it weighs, but look, unless you hold the whole thing, it can't help but sag underneath its own weight. That's just too much. But yeah, aside from that, my dread about doing this again was mostly unfounded. To tell you the truth, it's an intuitive enough transformation that I was able to figure out despite having not done it for many years with minimal fuss. I just didn't necessarily get much fun out of it. And the truck you're left with? It is a truck. Not the neatest or most accurate Prime truck mode, but it's not the messiest either, not by a long shot. And every wheel has working suspension. Much like the leg vents, I have no idea why it has this, it does not need it, but it does have it, and it is neat. I do wish the legs compacted a bit more, since the back is very long and the bit where the back of the cab meets it is just the robot mode hips and they stand out a mile. But it's fine. It's fine. It rolls really well too, the joys of rubber tyres, I suppose. I do find it interesting that they intentionally kept his cab stripe, since that's famously something that would disappear from his animation model's alt mode, and the way that this transforms means that it could disappear here too, they just chose not to. They had to paint a whole new one on for this truck mode. Hell, on this deco it even changes colour, since in the robot mode it's white and this one's silver. So that's MP1 Optimus Prime, and I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I want to. It's the first Masterpiece toy, it's a little bit of Transformers history, and it was something I bought to fulfill an unrealised childhood dream. But it just doesn't do much for me anymore. I've had way more fun with the mainline Deluxe Prime in the less than a year I've had him than I've ever had with MP1 in nearly 2 decades. I liked him as a display piece when I got him, but once I got into Transformers collecting properly, I realised that I prize other things much higher than how imposing they look standing bolt upright on the shelf, like posability, a fun transformation, or having an adorable alt mode. And I think MP1 is the reason that I don't really care about the Masterpiece line. As far as my mind is concerned, I've tried it, and it just wasn't for me. And even though I know that MP1 is very much not, for better or worse, representative of the line as a whole, or indeed the world of third-party Masterpiece grade toys, that's how it's felt in my head. And I know that I've passed on a few Prime toys over the years, partially because I know that I already have this huge one that I don't really much care for. But maybe now that I've made this video and articulated some of these thoughts, I can grow. Maybe finally move this guy onto someone who'll get more out of him, and I don't know, maybe try some other Optimus Primes or Masterpiece figures I might like better that I wouldn't normally have tried, free of the hang-ups that this thing gave me. I suppose that's not really any kind of actual personal growth, it's just enabling a new avenue of poor spending habits. But you know, you gotta take whatever victories you can in 2025. But still, MP1 does at least show that just being first at something doesn't always mean you're the best at it.